This week's episode of History Town is brought to you by...
It's 1862. You are hand-digging through layers of frustrating gravel, hoping and praying the next shovel stroke will expose a fortune in gold. Everyone says it's crazy, but there's too much at stake. Then, just when the outcome seems impossibly bleak, the ground begins to pay. The lead is struck, and the greatest creekside placer gold deposit the world has ever seen is suddenly yours for the taking. This is Barkerville's story.
For more information, visit barkerville.ca. Barkerville, a National Historic Site of Canada.
You found History Town.
You found History
You
Town.
found History Town.
You found History Town.
Hey, you found History Town. Nice one.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to History Town. I am your host. My name is Matthew Quick, and on this week's episode, we'll be talking with James Douglas, who is the manager of visitor experiences in Barkerville Historic Town and Park, and also a very close friend of mine. Amazing, talented actress, also writer, songstress? Songs maker? She writes music and performs comedy shows. Christina Patterson. Now, History Town is a listener-supported podcast, which means that at any time, if you feel like liking, sharing, retweeting History Town podcast, it is greatly appreciated. Also, if you're somebody who wishes to be on the podcast, whether that's through an interpreter or a historian, feel free to give me an email at info@historytown.ca or speak to me at matt@historytown.ca. Also, the executive producer is James Douglas at james@historytown.ca and Dirk Van Stralen, who is in charge of our media at dirk@historytown.ca. Now, before I begin, I'd like to check in with my good friend there in Barkerville, James Douglas. James, how you doing today?
I am doing very well, Matt. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Now, on this episode, we have Christina Patterson. I know, lovely Christina Patterson, affectionately known as Tina, her pet name by her husband, David Radford. She was a school mistress? Is that what we call it? Mistress?
There are several different terms. School mistress is completely appropriate. School marm is one that you hear often, although they didn't really call them marms at the time. It's sort of more something that has come down through the annals of history. But school mistress, school teacher, often just teacher, to be perfectly frank.
Now, my only experience really teaching is that when I left university in 2003, I was asked to come by a directing and scriptwriting class in my old high school because they had a new theater teacher. And she was just like, I've never taught this before. And me and Stuart Kaywood went by and helped out. But the only problem with me is that I was reading a lot more David Mamet at the time. And so whenever I was giving notes, I'm like, you just speak free, man. You just speak free. You say what you want. That's not real. Realism is this. Truth. Is there truth here? And I was really annoying to these grade 12s who were like, my play is about me breaking up with my boyfriend. And I'm like, right, but I know. And I didn't think objectively in towards what the goals of the class were. However, I know you, and I know you've taught many classes. What was your experience teaching? Because I believe that you were teaching interpretation. You also taught intro theater?
I did in university, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, it all started back in the day.
Perfect.
I actually grew up in a university, if you can believe it. My
Really?
mom and dad. Well, my mom and dad split up when I was quite young. Everything's okay. They were really great friends.
Okay.
But my mom went back to school and finished her master's degree in sociology at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, where we were living at the time. And so, my mom was a grad student. I was at the university all the time. And a lot of grad students were my babysitters, or I was just hanging out in her office while she was a TA or taught some classes. So, and then when we moved to Vernon, I was 8, I think, when we moved to Vernon. The reason that we moved there was because she got a job teaching at Okanagan College, which eventually became Okanagan University College, and she ultimately retired as the chair of the Sociology and Anthropology Department at the OUC campus in Kelowna. So I really did grow up steeped in academia, and I was very familiar with classes and what it was like to teach classes. So when I was in high school, actually, I made very good friends with an amazing man named Keith Perry, who was the drama teacher at Clarence Fulton Secondary School in Vernon, back when Fulton was still in Polson Park. The newer version of the school has been rebuilt out Okanagan Landing Way, but back in the day, we were in Polson Park. Ironically, that area that was now our school is a skateboard park. So ultimately, the kids in the smoke pit won, and the school got torn down. And now they can shred to their heart's content. But
That's awesome.
It is actually pretty awesome that
Yeah.
that the community of Vernon did that. I thought that was really cool. But Keith Perry recognized, I think, pretty early on, not only my keen interest in drama and theater, but also my natural affinity toward teaching. So he had already in previous years had a couple of students come in, and he developed sort of a directed studies course. So as early as the 10th grade, I took a directed studies with him as a teaching assistant. And so he would sort of do, not master classes, but advanced classes with me on teaching techniques and specifically drama in education. And then I would come in and help him with his grade 8 class while I was in grade 10. And I would teach that class. And then I just kept doing that year after year. There was sort of new levels that I could take. So the following year, when I was in the 11th grade, I helped teach a grade 9 drama class. And then when I was in the 12th grade, I taught with him a grade 10 acting class, so specifically an acting class. And that year, he actually suffered a medical accident. He had an abscess under his knee and was out of commission for a little while, and they brought a substitute teacher in during that year, my grade 12 year. And basically, between me and the substitute teacher, we just agreed to let me teach that grade 10 acting class. So,
Awesome.
I don't know if I'm getting them in trouble by saying this, but for half the school year, I was actually the teacher of that class. So when I went on and went into post-secondary education, the idea of teaching and perhaps, going further with my graduate career and going into university as a teacher was something that was very definitely on my mind. So I sort of, again, arranged my schedule that way. Ultimately, after my undergrad, which took quite a while for me to go through, and I supplemented some of my income by teaching drama classes and some creative writing classes as well. But I also then went back and started a master's degree because I had finally decided that I was going to go on and do this thing that I had been thinking about for years, which totally failed, by the way. After a year of my master's degree, I quit and ran off to Prague with an internationally renowned director so that I could be making history instead of reading about theater history. But that's another story entirely. But while I was a master's student, I was a teaching assistant for 2 different professors, actually. One of whom is a fellow named Leslie Bland, who now has a film production company based out of Victoria and California. They've been doing very well recently. He was also the artistic director of Kaleidoscope Theater for years. And he taught an intro to theater course. So it was basically theater for non-majors. And I was the teaching assistant there, so he let me take some of the lectures, specifically the stuff that when we were dealing with Greek theater history, because that's what I was studying in my master's degree. And then I also did all of the essay marking and exam prep and marking and that sort of thing. And I also then worked as a teaching assistant for Dr. Jennifer Wise, who was my theater history supervisor during my master's degree, and did a little bit of lecturing for her, but a lot of marking as well. And then Danette and my theater company, Histrionics Theater Company, which is a consulting small theater company in BC, we produce new work based on historical themes, but we also do consulting for historic and heritage sites around the province, as well as workshops and classes on historical interpretation, and specifically the kind of historical interpretation that we helped pioneer and do practice, which is sort of an omniscient form of that.
And if I was going to contact you about that, let's say I was a person that was interested in this, how would I get a hold of you?
Well, you can get a hold of me personally at histrionicstheater.co. There's contact information, including an email contact form that you can email us directly through our website, histrionicstheater.co. But also Barkerville does provide these sorts of services as well. So I would be remiss if I didn't say, contact me at Barkerville, james.douglas@barkerville.ca. james.douglas@barkerville.ca. And if you are looking to have some consulting done, or if perhaps you're looking to take a class, for example, we are hosting a writing retreat this September with TJ Dawe. I think I might have mentioned this last week.
You mentioned it last time, but we should
Yeah.
keep mentioning it because I'm very interested in that.
Well, it's the same sort of thing, right? I mean, Barkerville is an amazing resource. It's a great historical resource. It has been a great academic resource. We have great relationships with the University of Victoria, with the University of Northern British Columbia, Thompson Rivers University, College of New Caledonia. There are so many people in the academic fields who are very interested in not only the historical research possibilities here in Barkerville, but a lot of what we're doing in a modern sense as well. So we have always held, when we've had an opportunity to, we've held things like seminars and conferences, symposiums. We're going to have a social studies symposium at the end of September as well here, and other sorts of classes and activities. And this was just a wonderful opportunity. TJ Dawe, who many people know as a fringe theater star, he's written and produced more than 50 plays. He's won awards for his work. He came up and helped support Barkerville in April. We were contacted by the National Canadian Film Day, or Canadian National Film Day organization, Real Canada, out of Toronto, and they have a British Columbia contingent, who contacted us in April to see if we wanted to be a part of this massive showing of Canadian films in all of the provinces and territories in Canada, all on the same day. So there's a whole list of Canadian films that we could show rights free. And we held a little mini film festival. And one of the films that we showed at the Sunset Theatre in Wells, BC, by the way, an amazing, wonderfully historic theatre in its own right.
Beautiful.
But one of those films was called The F Word, which was a film that came out, I think it was in 2010. It might have been a little bit later than that. Starring Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, a woman named Zoe Kazan, and Adam Driver, who was Kylo Ren, of course, in Star Wars The Force Awakens. But anyways,
nobody ever says for Radcliffe, like, Swiss Army Man, or, like, the Woman in Black.
Although The Woman in Black's pretty good. I haven't seen Swiss Army Man.
On the real, that scared the heck out of me. Like, yeah. But off topic, but totally. So Adam Driver, Daniel Radcliffe, The F Word.
Yeah, so they made this movie called The F Word, which was released as The F Word in Canada, but in the United States it was called What If? I guess they decided the connotation of the F word wasn't going to really play with American audiences, so they changed the name, but it's exactly the same film. But the really amazing thing about that movie is that it's based on a play called Toothpaste and Cigars that was written by TJ Dawe and a fellow named Mike Rinaldi, who is another old university friend of mine. Yeah, there you go, right there.
2013.
2013. Okay.
2013.
I think they actually started production around 2010 or something. That's why that date is in my head. But regardless, that script was on the blacklist in Hollywood for a couple of years, but it had been adapted from this play called Toothpaste and Cigars, which TJ and Mike had written. So I got this idea. There was some money through Real Canada. I thought, hey, well, since I know the original writers of this play that the movie was based on, and given that Mike Rinaldi used to work in Barkerville, in fact, he's the reason, I might have said this to you before, but he is the reason that I came into Barkerville.
He is, yeah.
And TJ had been here before. He really liked the place, so we got a little bit of sponsorship money through Real Canada to bring them out and do a question and answer talk back after the showing. So that whole adventure got TJ really thinking about, he teaches writing at Langara College in Vancouver. And he had been really talking to a lot of his students in the past couple of years about what it would be like to just kind of get away from it all. He has a family cabin on Keats Island, just off the Sunshine Coast. And so he and a couple of friends have often just gone and done writing retreats on their own on this island. So he was thinking of doing something a little bit more structured with a few more people, getting really far away from the Lower Mainland and just seeing if what could happen in a mentorship kind of relationship with these students. So he approached us in Barkerville about doing this. So we put the class together. He'll be here between the 1st and the 8th of October. We have a weekend session that people can sign up for, or the entire week. And we'll have up to 15 students who will be here just basically soaking in the professional awesomeness that is TJ Dawe and getting some stuff written. That's the most important thing. It's called Shut Up and Write for a good reason. We're taking you away from Wi-Fi and your cell phones and television and movie theaters and bars and everything. We're taking you away from everything. We're putting you in this 1860s gold rush town and saying, go for it. Write this thing that you have always wanted to write. And you'll have access to this guy who has a tremendous amount of experience, who can just help you achieve some of the goals that you have. So we're very excited about that opportunity. Wow. And what's great about that is that it gives us an opportunity to use some of these new spaces that we've been building over the last couple of years. For example, over the last about 5 years, actually, we've had a really cool project. We've been restoring, or actually reconstructing, the original 1920s to late 1930s schoolhouse that was in Barkerville.
Oh, so, look at you. You're smooth, man. Look at the smoothness. I started out pretty clunky about teaching, and you went from teaching to TJ Dawe to just sliding right in to where you knew where I wanted to go, because we're talking about Christina Patterson, who is the school teacher, into that new schoolhouse. And wow, like you basically put your arm around me at the movie theater, and I didn't even know what was going on.
I'll be really gentle, Matt, I promise. But seriously, because for years, and we still have the small one-room schoolhouse, the Williams Creek Schoolhouse here in Barkerville, which is actually somebody's home that was converted into that schoolhouse in the 60s so that people could get that really authentic one-room schoolhouse, school marm, or teacher experience. And that's a really important element to our interpretive offerings here in Barkerville. But a few years ago, we had a bit of a conundrum because we'd gotten some grant money to restore the old Butterfield barns that are on the back street of Barkerville and basically turn the inside of those into a hermetically sealed, completely humidifying, controlled, temperature-controlled environment for some of the more sensitive artifacts that are in Barkerville. Because if you visit Barkerville, you might not understand that there are 135 buildings in Barkerville, and you can go into or interact with about 60% of those buildings. The rest of them are filled with artifacts. We have 187,000 items in our collection that were either original to Barkerville or things that people have donated over the years that are period appropriate and or were in Barkerville, left, and then have come back. So we have all of this stuff, and some of these artifacts are tremendously sensitive. They're more than 150 years old in many cases. So we have to keep them in environments that basically keep them in stasis so they don't disintegrate over time. So we got some grant money to restore these buildings and turn them into this amazing state-of-the-art facility. But we needed a place to put some of the artifacts that were already being stored in that building. So a plan was hatched to reconstruct the original 1920s schoolhouse, which was the schoolhouse in Barkerville. It was built in the 20s. It burned down by the early 40s. It was gone. But for the time that it was here, it was the only school in Barkerville. So we wanted to be able to represent that. And we put it almost exactly where it originally was, which is between the Masonic Hall and J.P. Taylor's drugstore. But we decided, since we had to, basically we were just building the shell of a building so we could fill it full of artifacts and then move them back into the newly restored buildings later. But we knew we had to then do something with the inside of this building, and we thought, well, since we have this opportunity now, and since we are getting more and more inquiries about meetings and conferences, family reunions, incentive travel, that sort of thing, people are wanting to come to Barkerville as a unique way of experiencing sort of a working holiday as well as anything else. Maybe we should start to think about our spaces as being able to accommodate those groups. So what we did was we designed the interior of the new Barkerville School to be an exact replica, or a fairly accurate replica of what it would have looked like in the 1920s, with walls of chalkboards, hand-built tables like little desks with benches for people to sit on. It's quite a large building, so you can seat up to 60 people in that building.
Wow.
But the amazing thing is, in the back, if you go into the back, there's a full kitchen. There's a full bathroom. There is a set of stairs that's on a hydraulic lift that comes down from the ceiling. So if you want to reorganize everything that's in the building, you can bring the tables and the benches upstairs. We have office chairs upstairs waiting to come down. One of the chalkboards on the wall slides back, and there is a full 55-inch touchscreen smartboard television. So it's not like a smartboard with a projector. It's actually a giant iPad, basically, although different company, smartboard.
Yep.
but it's touchscreen, so we have full Wi-Fi capability within the building, so people can come in and do presentations, full multimedia presentations. We can do video and audio conferencing through there. It's a really great sort of moving forward to be able to adapt some of the newly built spaces to be functional in many different centuries, basically. So we wanted to then start piloting the use of that building. So that will be the building that we use as our main building during Shut Up and Write when TJ is here. People can get a little bit of access to the outside world if they need it for research purposes or whatever. But then we can then use the rest of the buildings in Barkerville as breakout rooms, so people can go to the Barkerville Hotel and up into the boardroom and be surrounded by 1860s, 70s interior architecture while they're writing, on a piece of foolscap with a pen or a pencil or something like that. But we're also then minutes away from hiking trails. People can just walk away on their own or in groups, and just have an experience that is really unparalleled when you aren't this far away from civilization. So it's going to be a really amazing opportunity for the students, and it's going to be a really great way for us to pilot some of these off-season activities.
That's amazing. And it's funny now, I know you. Was there any talk of possibly having like a bust of William Shakespeare that you lift the head open and have a red button that you can push to? Not many people will get that reference, but if they do, God bless you.
Totally. Actually, I did actually ask for it. It was going to be a bust of Billy Barker.
Oh.
I thought sitting in the corner, flip it open, press the button, mine shaft opens up, and boom.
You and Stuart. And one thing that I when I went there in May, there was a few changes that I saw, and I saw the schoolhouse because I haven't been back. I think at that point when I came in May of 2016, last time I went was like 3 years earlier, was next to where you have the hydraulic lift display, you have a walking path that actually leads you right into the top of, I don't know the name of the mountain, but
that's the Ridge of Proserpine there. Well, it's getting up to the Ridge of Proserpine. So if listeners are familiar with where the water wheel is situated in Barkerville, there was an old bridge that had actually been taken out by an ice flow a couple of winters ago that went across to what was the old Canadian claim. So that bridge has been completely replaced. The Canadian claim cabin has been completely restored. This is all thanks to not only the Barkerville Heritage Trust, but the Friends of Barkerville, Caribou Goldfields Historical Society. I cannot stress enough how much great work that organization does to raise funds for Barkerville to help with some of these projects. So they restored the Canadian claim cabin. They redid the hydraulic monitor and flume system so you can really get a chance to see what that looked like. And then, they built a series of stairs, very natural looking stairs.
Oh, yes.
Just using like logs and rocks and things. That goes to 2 viewing platforms up the side of that valley. So you get 2 really unique perspectives top down on Barkerville. It's become an incredibly popular destination for people when they get here, especially photo bugs. If people like to take photos when they're on vacations, this is an amazing opportunity. You can get right up to the top. Yeah, so you're right on the edge of that. It's sort of just past the Conklin's Gulch, French Creek sort of area.
Yeah.
There. So just up on the side of that hill.
Like if you're walking up the main street and you reach the Theatre Royal and the little clearing just before Chinatown, if you take a left, you'd be able to walk almost
right to it. Yeah.
Yeah, right to it.
Yeah.
It's not like by no means is it like a hard climb. It's the way they built the stairs. They level off. There's little platforms, and that I noticed that when I was walking up, that I was like, oh, okay. Like there's a little area that if you're bringing up somebody who had knee problems or need a little time walking, you can step off to the side. It's very big up there. There's a lot of people. It's not like a small little area. And there's even like I didn't get a chance to explore it because, quite frankly, I was up there by myself and I realized it was bear season, and I had my headphones on listening to a movie review of the Train Spotting, and I don't know why I'm telling you that part, but I had this moment of like, nobody knows I'm up here. I just sort of went up there by myself, and nobody's around, and I'm not making any noise because I have my headphones on. I should unplug my phone and blast through my phone this podcast review of Train Spotting, and so if a bear will approach me, maybe he will be shocked by the writing of Irvin Welsh, and leave me alone. And then but I didn't get a chance to view more. But I noticed to the left of it, is there a new cabin, or is there a little like I didn't really get a chance to investigate it.
Actually, it's a kind of cistern. If you walk through that little path into the forest, a couple of things you get to see. One is some roped off areas where you're not allowed to go, and the reason you're not allowed to go there is because there's been sinkholes there. So some
Oh, okay.
old shafts or something that was down there has caused the ground to sort of collapse. So you can't go there, but it's really cool to see. And then you just walk along the path a little bit further, and they've rebuilt for us an old water tank, basically. So what it would have looked like when they were filling these giant, because of course these water cannons that they're using in hydraulic mining are fed by water, and it's all gravity
Right.
fed. So they've got to have a giant cistern up on the top of the valley that then forces the water down through a hose that gets smaller and smaller as it goes down the side of the hill until it finally comes to that water monitor, which looks just like a giant garden hose nozzle,
Yeah.
and then it shoots this water out in such rapid force that it can literally move boulders off the side of a hill. It's unbelievable what they did with these hydraulic monitors. So yeah, so you can go back into the side of when you're up top at that top viewing platform, you can just walk into the forest a little bit and see one of these giant water tanks.
And I think the impressive thing about it is not because I don't think people understand when you say hydraulic thing and you say you washed away a mountainside, that hydraulic would wash away a mountainside.
Oh yeah.
Like it just, and it would just, I mean, it's almost like that beautiful destruction that you see, like somebody sat there and was like, oh, we just take a big hose and wash all that away and get the gold that way. And you're like, that's, wow. Okay. And it's amazing to look at and also, but incredibly dangerous. I mean,
It
how,
really-
how many people we heard that were killed by the monitor going array, or getting people walking in front of it, or something being washed out and falling on top of people. Like it was a dangerous mining operation, that's for sure.
Oh, it really was. It really was. And they outlawed it in the 1950s, partly for the danger reason and partly for the environmental impact, for sure. I mean, we cannot stress enough, and I know I say that a lot, but we cannot stress enough how much effect hydraulic mining had on the geography of the area. I mean, you know, the Barkerville Valley, the Williams Creek Valley, looks totally different now than it did in the 1860s and 70s. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they blasted away those hillsides. So when you look at the old photographs, it looks like the valley is narrower and tighter. You know, like that the walls are sort of higher and they're closer together. And it's literally
Right.
true. They have blasted away, you know, meters of the sides of the valley. And then, of course, there needs to be a place for all of that rock to go. And where does it go? To the bottom of the valley. So then you get this buildup, especially, you know, then you get the runoff in the springtime. You get 30 feet of snow here in the winter. There's no trees on any of the hillsides because all of that wood's being used either to build things or to burn. And there's nowhere for that snowpack to go once it melts. So it just starts, rivers of water coming into these valleys, bringing with it all of these rocks that have been busted loose by the hydraulic mining. And you get literally a sea, or rather a river, I suppose, of rock and mud that flows down into the valley. So everybody has to jack their buildings up. That's why all of the buildings in Barkerville are on stilts, is because you literally had to stop them from being buried by mud and rock. And as you know, buildings that were too large for that didn't get moved.
No.
So the original Theatre Royal
Yes.
is underneath the Theatre Royal that we visit right now, because literally the center of town in Barkerville is at least 40, if not 50 or 60 feet higher than it was back in the 1870s.
I remember Richard found this picture, or he found this little cell that he found on eBay, I think it was, and it's in his book, but it has bridges. They had bridges going across to the boardwalks because you wouldn't want to walk in the main street. They had these like arching bridgeways because of
Yes.
the mud and water. It's amazing to see.
We know there was at least one of them up in Chinatown, and I've seen that photograph. It's amazing. We're going to rebuild that bridge.
Oh, perfect. Wow.
Not anytime soon. We probably won't start construction until 2018, but
Right.
it's definitely on our list. It would be an amazing thing for people to see. They were high enough so that the stagecoach could pass underneath it. So again, what a great opportunity to have a really different perspective on Barkerville. It'll be properly engineered, so it'll be totally safe. People can walk across the town street
Wow.
and take photographs from there. So I'm really, really excited about that project.
That's amazing, and it's sort of almost like when you think about it, if people could have a perspective, like when you watch people go down those water parks, and people stand at the bridge and you see the water slide, the slide go underneath. the water splashes you. It could be the same way, except with a horse going underneath you. You could take the photos.
Exactly.
I don't know if that came across well, but well, James, I really appreciate you sitting down with me today. You're smooth as glass, my friend, and I will talk to you next week. And you have yourself a great day.
I look forward to it, Matt. You have a great day too.
Bye, James. Up next, we'll be hearing from Christina Patterson. However, first, here's a word from our sponsor.
So, if you lived in the 1870s and had the misfortune of being caught committing a crime in Barkerville right after the judge had left town, you could rest secure in the knowledge that you would be languishing in jail until the judge returned the following year. And your trial would happen in one day. Swift justice. Visit Barkerville.
For more information, visit barkerville.ca. Barkerville, a National Historic Site of Canada.
Up next, this is my radio voice. I'm just kidding. Up next, we have Christina Patterson. Christina Patterson is a very talented performer, actor, songwriter. Also, she played the school marm in Barkerville for 3 seasons. It's a fun conversation, and I say that a lot, but this one is very conversational. We've known each other for a few years. We write comedy together. Also, this is my first interview that I conducted for this podcast. And so with that, it means that I recorded it live. I was getting used to how to record. So there are points where the mic sort of seems a bit funny, or we didn't know how close we should sit next to each other. And it was just all part of the learning process. But luckily, I was in good hands as I was with Christina, and she's a seasoned vet. Without any further ado, I present to you the lovely. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Matthew.
How are you?
I'm good.
I was trying to think about this on my way here. I think the hardest part about interviewing friends is pretending that I don't know everything about them as I talk to them. So you may notice, you may get some questions where you'll be like, Matt, you know that. But I want to share who you are and how awesome you are with everyone else, all the listeners. So I want to start first. You run your own production company with Launchpad Productions. You are a very talented actress, had award-winning Fringe shows. Also, for 3 seasons, I want to say 3.5 seasons in Barkerville.
We met in 2005, yes. I think you and David probably met in 2004, but I came up to work there in 2005. Well, no, so that would mean we would have met in 2004 when I came up. Am I right about that?
I think we did cross paths. In 2004, I was working in the schoolhouse.
That's right.
I was Mr. Mundell, and we're referencing Barkerville Historic Town and Park. Christina was an interpreter there for 3 seasons, and you played the lovely Miss Hall.
That's right. I was Matt's, what's the word that's not predecessor? Aftercessor.
Aftercessor?
Yeah.
That's right.
That's accurate.
I think that's right. It was after. And there's a successor.
That's right. There was a teacher between Matthew and myself, but I came in and did the schoolhouse as Mrs. Hall for 3 full summers of chaos and fun. And a lot of the fun was specifically because of Matthew, including the fact that we lived in the apartments and our kitchen windows looked right across to each other. So there was a good deal of barbecues and fun, but Matt did cause a lot of trouble for me on the street, which was a good deal of fun.
We had a lot of offbeat shenanigans. Now I want to start with a story, and I don't know if you'll remember this. Is that one day I was playing Mr. What was his? I was portraying Mr. I will edit that in later. I am certain of it. I'll take a pause, and then now I'll edit it in. And I was sneaking to the back of the schoolhouse. And I don't know why I was doing it. I think I was trying to be a smart aleck. And I was just looking around. And you were in the back sweeping. So I think I was planning to scare you. So I knocked on your back door. And do you remember this? Because the little back of the boardwalk, nobody really walks on this back porch.
Or takes good care of the maintenance of it.
Now it's all fixed up. And it was at that time, I think it had some water damage. And the boards broke and I knocked on the door, you opened the door, and I took a step, and I literally, both boards broke like it was a Three Stooges, and I went split-legged onto another board. Basically, I straddled and fell and straddled on another board. Right? And do you remember this?
I'm so glad you reminded me of that.
And it was funny because I was trying to be a little prankster. I'm never a little anything, so I just walked around. I probably like just my sheer force, my manliness just broke these two boards, and it was like a prank on myself. I don't know. I was wondering. I was hoping you'd maybe remember that. I don't know if you do.
I do remember that now. I hadn't thought about it for a long time, but oh my, that is so funny. It was the great thing about playing the school teacher, and I'm sure you'll probably agree, is that you had that building to yourself. It was your little building to take care of. Every day you had to sweep it at the end of the day, which wasn't always the greatest because it's old-fashioned broom and lots of old-fashioned dirt. But it's your little schoolhouse, and you make what you want of it. And I had taken it and cleaned out the little kitchen back part that Matthew's talking about. And I set up the stove so I could have both wood stoves going. And, growing up in Victoria in a house, in a suburban house, when do you get to play with chopping wood and fire? And
that's something where I really want to start. So you grew up in Victoria.
Woohoo.
You went to high school here in Victoria, I can only imagine.
I did. I went to all school in Victoria.
And university?
No.
No.
I went to Studio 58 for one term.
Come on.
Well, I got kicked out. Not for doing anything wrong.
What do you mean you got kicked out?
I was young and they said I would never be an actor. And that I should leave.
Jokes on them. My wife went there, and you always hear those stories about that school. And I mean, we shouldn't badmouth that school. It's that my wife graduated from there and she did great. But clearly, jokes on them.
Yeah, jokes on them in their retirement from being teachers. Enjoying retirement in Vancouver.
And it's sort of funny too, because I never really thought about that, is that when you have, like, I went to theater school as well, and all my professors, some of them did local theater, but a lot of them were just taught. And it was almost like when they were saying that, because I got the same thing. They were like, you are just a bit of a wild man. You should not be here. And I think maybe deep down, probably they were like, go and get a trade. Go, like, do you know how to hammer? Like, do you know how to hammer something? Go hammer something, like, please. Like, and sometimes I think they're just like, they're like warnings. They're like omens. Yeah. They're trying to scare you off.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, they were like, go back to being a cashier, because that's more your speed. And they, nothing against cashiers. I was a cashier for years and years. But they said I was too young, inexperienced. Oh, never going to be an actor.
Well, the funny thing about it too is that, like, I know you, and your passion, you run deep. Like, it's you get fiery up, and like we've left restaurants because you've noticed that they serve imitation shark fin soup.
Well, to be fair, we thought it was real shark fin soup at the time.
That's true.
I've since eaten in that restaurant because I learned it was imitation. Even though I still think that, why are you imitating shark fin?
It's such a weird. It
doesn't taste like anything, apparently.
It's a weird concept that you'd be like, imitation, like, that's why.
I don't get it.
That's why you go like imitation. It's like tofu. Just say it's tofu fin soup.
That's right.
Like, why even, like, let's not, like, it's not like somebody makes a tofu pork chop and goes like, it's imitation pork chop. And you're like, no, this is very nice. Like, no, nobody ever does that.
That's right.
We sat down, me and your husband, David Radford, awesome power couple. There, and I'll say this about you, is that you saw that on the menu, you got up, and David went, finish your drink. And I was like, excuse me? Yeah, you better finish that drink right now, because we're leaving. And I looked over and I saw you talking with the maitre d', and then you walked back and grabbed your coat and you're like, we're out of here. And we had pizza, which at the end of the day, I was like, I'm a big dude. I like whatever, food's food. And so I know you, that the minute somebody said you should not be doing something, as long as it's legal, I should point that out. You're a total law-abiding person. It's not like...
Mostly.
Well, come on now. It's not good. You start confessing to things. Like, sometimes I walk by and I steal tin cans from thrifties. And I dent them. And put them back on the shelf. You're a wild person.
Yeah.
But I know you. That's the minute somebody says you should not be doing something that you have a passion for, you're going to do it.
It's tragic, really. Honestly, like, I could have been doing something super, super successful by now. I could have, but it's the fact that I had to keep acting out of spite.
Which, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, it's my dream. It's my love, and I carry it with me. And you're just like, no, I'm throwing people, like, when you go to auditions, you slap down the photo and like, I'm going to throw this in somebody's face. This part I'm going to get. You're a fiery person. And that's what I've always loved about you, is that and you're always about right. You're always on the side of right.
I hope so.
I've never see you take a side that I'm like, whoosh, yeesh, I don't know about this one, Christina. Like, maybe we take a loss on that one. But I know you, and so you went to Toronto at that time frame?
Yeah. In 1999, I got hired to go to do a British farce at the Huron County Playhouse. And I had a beautiful little apartment in Victoria. I had 2 little jobs that paid for everything, one in a flower department and one as a box office person at Langham Court Theatre. And I had this offer to do a job for a month in a real playhouse and in a union show. And I thought, wow, if I'm going to go all the way out east, well, not east, but out to Ontario for 1 month, I better at least go to Toronto and give that a go. So I did that and wound up, well, the play at the Huron County Playhouse was a kind of a fun little romp. And you're in Grand Bend, Ontario, where it's party summer. It's like being down in a party town in Mexico. Everyone's just walking around with bikini tops and singing karaoke at night and partying their faces off. It was
and
great
seeing
fun.
Theater every night.
And seeing theater in the Huron County Playhouse. But then, so then David decided to come with me, just to pal along with me. And the 2 of us drove across Canada together. Okay. He went on to Toronto and he found himself a job. And then I, after my show, I went to Toronto. At this point, we were just best friends. And so... Best friends,
you travel across Canada together.
That's right.
I mean...
Well, we always... if you don't know, we're married now, just in case that's the question. But we for years and years, we were best friends. And we always made a point of never, ever shacking up for convenience or anything like that. So there was never any kind of like, let's move into a 1-bedroom apartment because it's cheaper. That was never ever going to be a thing for us. Not until we decided we were together. Now, we did live as roommates in houses, but in separate rooms. So we paid our own full rents and things like that.
So I have to ask, how long were you guys friends until you started to date?
That's blurry.
Well, hey, trust me, like, I have several, I just take a shot in the dark every time it's my anniversary for when I met my wife. Now that we got married, it's like being married's fantastic. It's a date.
Yes.
Like, it's not like, oh, we did kiss on this one night.
Yeah.
But then you didn't return my call, so I don't know what was going on.
That's
like,
right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people go by, like, you know, in the biblical sense, another way, but...
That's right.
I don't know. Like, me personally... I usually just go by, like, first time you held hands in public and you didn't mind being out in public with each other. Which, I mean, geez, that makes me sound like I'm from Happy Days. Like, from the 1950s. Like, I stepped out with my gal.
That's right. Yes, your job in Barkerville is like, wow, this is crazy. This 1872, people are so forward thinking.
Like, that sounds right.
This girl's showing ankles here.
Hey, fellas, get a look. There's ankles over here.
Well, actually, David and I were best friends with benefits for a good deal of time in between the time that we technically started Basically, by the time we decided we were boyfriend and girlfriend, for lack of a better term, he had gone off to England for a while and thought about it and came back and said, I'm kind of done with this wishy-washy thing. Either we're going to be just friends or we're going to be together. And so...
You know what he should have done?
What?
He should have challenged you to be like, Christina, you will never be my girlfriend.
That's right.
And then
I would have been married out of spite.
oh my God, that's true. It would not be a love marriage. You'd be like, every day you wake up, you're like, see this ring, buddy?
You said I couldn't do it.
you said that in my face.
You double dog dared me.
Oh, we're getting married, David. He's like, I don't think this is going to work out for me.
Well, interestingly enough, the second that we decided we were boyfriend and girlfriend was within a couple months of him having decided to move back out to the West Coast. I had not made that decision yet, so he did. He moved back out, and suddenly we were having a long-distance relationship, when after all these years we were just friends that were...
Right.
And eventually it was probably less than... Well, it was probably within a year we were married.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's, I mean, in my mind, you guys have always been married.
Yeah.
You guys never dated. It
No.
was just always you two.
We didn't really. Like, honestly, we were a couple for all of 2 months before he moved away. And then I moved, then we decided over the phone to get married.
At this time, how much theater were you doing in Toronto?
One was a Halloween show, and we took it from school to school, pack up a little van, take the costumes, drive out to Hamilton, set up the set, do the show, do the question and answer with the kids, drive to the next place. The other show was a little more difficult. There was scaffolding involved. We had to set that up every show.
It's always my favorite when you're touring a show and the designer's like, okay, so here's what we're doing. Here's your set. And you're like, oh, okay. So just for this one performance? They're like, no. All those pallets have to be folded up and placed in your trailer. And you're just like, well, every day? You're like, come on.
Yeah,
like
twice a day.
And it's sort of funny. And you go to these schools and you set them up. And then by the end, I don't know about you, but I was on a few tours where by the end, it's just like half the set's going up. You're like, well, you're looking at the size of the school. Like, you're almost like, what's the house? Yeah, they're just going to get the fireplace today. And maybe this little wing right there. Oh,
Yeah.
that looks nice.
I think maybe where we ended up slowly cutting it short, and this seems a lot meaner than what you guys were doing by giving part set. Ours was actually cutting short the question and answer eventually.
Oh.
Okay, we have time for one more question, kids. Because to be honest, you get the odd question. How did you make that fire? Or what is it like playing a character of a star and whatnot? But most of them are like, I have a sister named Christina. Good question, kid. Next, How do you remember all those words?
Well, now that leads perfectly into Barkerville.
Yeah,
Being a school teacher.
that's right.
So, because
right.
right off the bat, all day, every day,
Yeah.
you are, and I will say this: the women of Barkerville are like Disney princesses in a historic park. Your dresses, you always had this blue it was almost like velvet dress that you came out in.
Yeah.
And it
different.
was, little girls were like, that's a princess.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
And so you get the sweet ones, and then you get men calling you a lady of the night. Like, it's sort of, there's no in between in Barkerville. It's sometimes, because you get the smart Alex who are like, oh, that's a woman of the evening. And then you get the little girls being like, you're a princess.
That's
and you're
right.
like, I'm a school teacher.
That's right.
So as questions go, I mean, we're both school teachers. What was your favorite experience in the classroom with all those kids?
Oh, wow. There's been a ton of favorites.
You can say more than one.
I have favorites in the sweet aw way, and then I also have favorites that are just because they're
But that's
why
one
don't
thing
I start with that one? Because what that is that for those of you who've been to Barkerville in specific, or perhaps many other historical museum parks and whatnot, you might notice that they sell pop guns, and The schoolhouse where I was the school mistress for, I was supposed to be very, very, very strict. Now, I had people coming up and saying, "You're so mean and you're so strict," before I've even said
Because
hello
you're the
to
school
them.
teacher.
That's right. Yes,
They expect it.
That's right. And are you going to give me the strap? So why don't I start with that? Actually, the very first thing is that every single person, when you're not in the middle of said lesson, where you ring the bell, line the people up, and sit them at the desks and have them in there for 40 minutes, when you're just in there and having people milling through, it's a constant stream of, is this the schoolhouse? Yes, it is. Are you the teacher? Yes, I am. Do you live in here? No, I don't. Oh, because you're an actor. No, it's because I'm a married school teacher, which is unusual for the time period. Meanwhile, they've zoned out and moved on, and the next person's asking the same question. So by the end of the day, I've been able to explain to them that Mrs. Hall was the wife of the Reverend. It was difficult to get teachers to stay there for extended periods of time in the gold rush. And as a matter of fact, as a married woman, Mrs. Hall wouldn't live in the back of the school, which was confusing for some people because the little school in Barkerville was a darling little house, which I loved.
They fixed it up now. They actually have where the schoolhouse is supposed to be.
That's right.
They have a brand new building where it's actually, like, it's supposed to be right next to the Masonic Lodge across the street from the bed and breakfast. That little spot in there was where they're supposed to be, and then I think it burned down because of a distillery. Don't quote me on this. Distillery fire, or like somebody had was making there was a fire that took place. Schoolhouse was gone, so the building you had is you're one of the first buildings people walk into.
That's right. Basically the administration, the candy store, the church, then the school.
It's a good concept. You get your candy, then you talk to God, and then you question the teacher why she does not live in the building.
That's right. And you walk in with your ice cream cone, which you're not supposed to have in the school, just so you know. Gentlemen, you're also supposed to take your hats off when you enter the school. Well, all the kids in the town come through and they go to the candy store and they buy these enormous jawbreakers that are bigger than their hands. And they spend their whole day sucking on them and licking them until their tongues are bleeding.
It's like a salt lick.
It's really,
kids.
yeah. And once you come into the school, the rules are, very quickly, you line up, boys on the left, girls on the right, smallest child to the tallest child, and you come in single file, and you stand at your desks until you're given permission to sit down, and you sit with your feet flat on the floor, your hands crossed on your desk, your back straight, good deportment, and all that. So what I'm struggling with at the time is trying to find the balance between, exactly like you just said, with trying to portray the strict teacher, because that's what most people want. They want to see you play that stern schoolmistress, but at the expense of upsetting other people who don't want to be told what to do. They want to see you do that. They just don't want you to do it to them. And so they're laughing their heads off when you're talking about making their dad get up and go to the corner because his fingernails are dirty. And they're laughing their heads off when you're talking about how they're going to get the strap or kneel on dry rice or whatever. But you do have to balance, because there's also little teeny kids who have big goober dads going, "Oh no, it's the school teacher. She's going to give you the strap." And this little tiny person has never experienced school in their entire life. They don't know. And all of a sudden they're putting this terrible fear of the school teacher's going to beat you to death. And so now I've got these little teeny kids coming in, and so I'm trying to play stern, but in fact I'm going, "Hello, sweetheart. That's okay. You sit here. No, you want to sit with mom instead? That's fine. You go sit with them." And then pretending to be stern for the others, but they've just seen me talk to this little kid like that. Well, anyways, the pop guns is a phenomenon there, and all through the town you hear pop, 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 pop. And so what I do is I warn the students in the lineup that if they bring any distractions into the schoolhouse, the distractions go into my wood stove. And up until my last year there, I think I certainly didn't have to take anything away from anybody. Most people put their things away. But I did have a couple of young men show up, I think, knowing that was coming, and definitely pushing the boundaries to the point where one who was smaller was sitting at the front and one who was larger was sitting at the back. And the two of them were in tandem, making sure to pop the guns whenever I was looking at the other one. And so I eventually took both of their pop guns and threw them in the fire. And every single person on the way out was trying to open the stove to look. And I was like, "Don't touch that, it's hot." And they think I'm kidding. And eventually I get the stick to move the little handle of the door, and I I pull the door open and there's just smoldering embers.
Oh, it's. I mean, I dreamt of doing that. I never like. That's why I love you, Christina. Like you have, of course, and it's great. And did they take it well?
Oh, they were fine.
They
I
probably
think
thought that was. They probably thought they were.
that's their story now. That they were bad in school and they got their guns taken away and thrown into the fire. And I think I'm 100% sure that they purposely bought those guns to have that.
There's
moment.
been a few times where kids, I've seen it where you'll get like 12-year-olds, 12, 13s will go and buy their pop guns knowing that they have school. And I've seen it. I've watched them run, grab their guns, and like the parents hold on to all their things that they've collected throughout the day, the maps and everything else. And the kids run and grab their guns and they have their and it's like Dennis the Menace. They're tucked in their back pockets.
Like their slingshot.
Yeah, exactly. And they're waiting for it. And they're just like, and because I think you hit upon something great. People want the strict. They want the Anna Green Gables.
They do.
They want that strict teacher, the school marm. And you have such a delicate balance because everybody else is walking through town saying good day and smiling and waving. And you're like you're the Lord Vader of Barkerville, because you just, as you would walk, you wouldn't see your feet on the ground. You'd just be moving like as what they called it, a ship. You'd be like sailing by, and people be like, "It's a school teacher."
That's right.
We'll be hearing more from Christina. However, first, here's a word from our sponsor.
When you visit Barkerville Historic Town, you can step into the past and live a present that harkens to a future where the past and present poetically coexist. You'll know this is true when you visit any of our merchants, and you can feast your wallet upon the latest household wares from the 1870s, and then discreetly pay for them with your debit and credit cards. Visit Barkerville. The old is new is old again.
For more information, visit barkerville.ca. Barkerville, a National Historic Site of Canada.
We return with Christina Patterson to discuss Barkerville, cabarets, and also some fun little stories. Here she is.
In fact, Matthew one time, David, my husband, was playing Mr. Coots, and Mr. Coots spent a lot of time at the schoolhouse. And Matthew started creating a rumor throughout the town of Barkerville that Reverend Hall was missing, and started putting up posters around town.
I don't remember this.
Oh, he went to the printing house, to the Caribou Sentinel, and printed off posters that said, "Missing, Reverend Hall, last seen reconnoitering the ridge with Mr. Coots." And so pretty soon, whenever I was bored, I would run up the street asking people if they'd seen Reverend Hall, and I ran into the store, the Mason and Daly, demanding that I needed 6 feet of rope and a bag of sugar and something for my horse to go look for my husband on the ridge. Pretty soon we had the whole town involved, and people were being questioned for the disappearance. And
there was a funny part too where David was playing Mr. Coots, and I was playing a report. I was Mr. Thompson, so I was constantly reporting on the news.
That's right.
And I was like I was talking with the tourists about the disappearance of Reverend Hall, and David walked by and picked up a large boulder rock and just stared at the rock and stared at my head and was sizing up my head and staring at the rock, and then put down one rock and picked up another rock and like sizing up which one to bash my skull in later, like to hide the news that I was spreading.
That's right.
And it was just,
But it got worse because, of course, then David started learning other characters to fill in for people. So one day he was Mr. Coots, and one day he was Chartres Brew, and one day he was Finbar Quinn. And so pretty soon rumors were getting pretty bad that, well, Mrs. Hall has a lot of different visitors to the schoolhouse.
I always remember, because of watching Deadwood.
I was
And
just going to say Deadwood.
the Deadwood is that when he would play Brew, Chartres Brew, David is both of you are very, I always joke that you're the handsomest couple in Barkerville. We're like, the most, like, you guys are Dorian Gray. Like, there's a picture somewhere of you guys getting old. Like, I don't know where it is. I don't know where you're hiding it, but you never look at it because you're very, very good looking couple. And David looked a bit like Bullock.
Yeah, Bullock from Deadwood.
Bullet. And so he would do the slump of his arm, like from the first season after he got attacked. And he did the slump of the arm and would walk up the street staring at you. And And I just saw you go flush and would you like fanning yourself, and it was a very cute thing because he'd be walking normal, talk to people, and all of a sudden he'd just look at you, and he'd be like this this odd tension in the air of him slumping his shoulder
That's
and
right.
staring at you and walking up the street.
That's right.
And I'd be sitting at the theater looking around like as you're walking up, and then you'd go, "Hello, Mr. Brew."
I like how you demonstrated. I wish people could see that because you just twirled your parasol when you said that.
Well, I think in most conversations I twirl imaginary parasol. It's wild thinking. So the Taylors were their mom and dad worked on the stagecoach with Tyler
Yeah.
Setzer, who man, what a great guy. He was like a 35-year-old and a 21-year-old, like the most mature at times. But he had this family, and it was the Taylors, and they had an oldest boy who was about 12.
I think he
13?
was maybe 10 when he started, wasn't
Oh, I thought he was a bit older than that, but they had you're right, because they had the two daughters and the young boy. And when we say free range kids, there's like, because that happens all the time, you just dress them in a costume. Mom and dad are working today, and they get up to their antics, go to the schoolhouse,
A lot.
and hang out, and we'd like rob the kid. Like I robbed that kid in front of an audience more than a few times. Just walk up to him, like shake him down in front of people as my full Newfoundlander, like, "What you got in your packets? Turn them out!" And like rob this poor kid.
Oh, he loved it.
Oh.
God, he loved it. The very first day I met this sweet little family from Saskatchewan was meeting that kid, Calvin. And this is a little redheaded kid. I'm walking down the middle of the street, and I stop and I look at something, and all of a sudden, just on the boardwalk, because they're raised above, this little voice behind me says, "Isn't it refreshing not to have electricity for a while?"
Oh.
And I just like these three kids they were so much fun. In fact, Calvin was one of my suspects for killing Reverend Hall, and he took it really well when I had him fingerprinted with the paint from
I forget.
with the finger paints from the schoolhouse. And we sent a letter up to Judge Begbie at the courthouse to ask him to try him in court and whatnot.
Oh.
But yeah,
Do you remember I got a slip and slide for my birthday?
I have a picture.
And me, Stuart, David, and yourself are in the backyard, and it's a hot day, and we're on this slip and slide as grown adults having a barbecue. It's like 2 p.m, and the Taylor kids got grounded because they didn't do something the night before. So we look up, and in their windows in their bedrooms in this courtyard, they're watching us on the slip and slide.
We are awful people.
Having fun, like having a water fight, and they're all stuck in their room having to read books, and we're just like, woo!
We're horrible
And
people.
I just remember we looked up at them, and we're like, "Come on out," and they were just like, close their blinds, sadly. Like, we can't watch these. They were like, "This looks like so much fun."
Oh, yeah. I remember that now. We had so much fun with them. We did a lot of plays at the outside of our time in order to make, you're acting when you're there, but when you want to be an actor, you start to feel like, I need to act. I need to learn lines and perform. And so we started the Whistle Pig Players.
Which I was involved in a few productions, but the first one was Midsummer Night Dream.
Yeah.
And it was because we called it like the Bard of Barkerville. Like we performed in the clearing.
Yeah. We were in the clearing right in Barkerville, which was unbelievable, especially doing that play because we set all of the mechanical characters as minors and the lovers were
Right.
of the era. So basically it was almost our costumes, but for the fairies we had to make the costumes, and then for the I think the mechanicals was kind of just different versions of the Barkerville clothes. But
Yeah,
they were
like
brilliant.
I grabbed a different costume
Yeah.
as one of the mechanicals, and everybody sort of just grabbed that wasn't their character. And we walked up. It was always my favorite. We gather all the
Mhm.
crowd at the bottom of the street, and we sang
Oh, Susanna.
"Oh Susanna" as we walked up the street, being led by Tim and
Andrew playing a
Andrew.
violin.
Oh,
And
yeah.
somebody on a squeeze box. And
it was it was a pretty awesome experience. Especially then we moved to The next production, and we did. I think we acted, me, you, Stuart, and David, through 2006 or 2005, 2006. We did like comedy shows, comedy auctions, cabarets. It's the 10-year. Can you believe it? 10 years ago,
Yeah.
we did the
Yeah.
cabaret at the Sunset Theater.
I remember the very first meeting in 2006.
Oh,
We were in our apartment, and it was you and me and David and Tim, and Stuart was just
Right.
coming up. Chris Cooley, maybe? Or no, Chris
Cooley
Cooley
was
wasn't there yet.
2007.
Yeah, I think.
I want to say that. And we did, because we did the cabarets. We did 6 cabarets. You guys hosted the first one, yourself and David, and set the tone. I had the second one and almost destroyed the tone with my shenanigans. We did the sci-fi one. We had the unspoken one, which I avoid that show. I will, if somebody asks me if I was ever part of the Cabaret of Cruelty that was designed
Yeah.
by Matthew Bissett.
Yeah.
Lovely guy, Matthew Bissett, but I disown that one. That's,
Mhm.
I mean, it's nothing about the show. It's just, that's one I got to wash my hands of.
Yeah, it was a tough one.
It's a tough one. But we did Ion, directed by David.
Yeah, Ion we did at the community hall, and then the next year we did Macbeth at
Right.
the Sunset Theater.
That was a great show. I really love that show.
That was
It was neat. It was technical wise, it was actually one of the because it's a Roadhouse theater, the Sunset Theater. I love that theater. But it was probably the most technically sound show. Like, so much stuff's going on in that show, like video wise, light wise. Like, that was I think that one used all of the space of that theater to like
yeah,
the 100th degree.
yeah,
It was fantastic.
yeah. It was a real that was 2007. Yeah, that was a real in 2006 we started that cabaret, but then we did Ion, which was a Euripides play. And so we had a full plates. The cabaret was every week.
Right. It
And
was
we would go through the town looking for different people to recruit. It was the whole town singing songs, telling jokes, playing music, doing sketches. And
it was like Saturday Night Live.
It was.
We had to we were handing scripts to people outside the front door.
That's right.
Because somebody was like, "Oh, I can't make it." So we're like, "Here's your script."
Yeah.
And we usually grab Marcello. Poor Marcello was always he was an actor at the Theatre Royal. And we usually grabbed him because he was too polite to say no. so many times he'd be outside the theater. I'm like, "Here's your lines.
Yeah.
You just got to stand there, hit your marks." And he'd know his lines better than me. Because
He was
he's a pro.
very professional.
And
It was amazing though, like to think that that's 10 years ago, and it was 10 years ago that we were sitting in that kitchen and creating this concept, and it was us and Tim Sutherland, who's no longer with us, and now we're 10 years later. And then Macbeth, Tim, and we did Midsummer Night's Dream with him, and him at the helm of that one, and Macbeth, and yeah, man, we had some ups and downs in that show, but it paid off. It was really, really good.
That's, I mean, how I got to know you guys so much is not only were you guys fantastic, but your place was where we would go to just pitch ideas.
Yeah.
We'd just sit there and just write scripts,
Yeah.
sketches, anything that somebody had. You'd have you guys would be there to listen and, figure it out. And it was always constructive, and we were always like fair with everybody.
Yeah.
And it was, it's one of those things that 10 years ago, it's crazy to believe that, and it would be 10 years ago. We're recording this on June 11th. So it would be around that.
It would be almost exactly 10 years ago.
That's, wow.
In fact, I am devastated because I had a disc with a recording of the first cabaret on it. And I was desperately looking for it, well, almost 1 year ago when we were trying to put a tribute together for Tim after he passed away. And I was searching everywhere for this disc, and I have no idea what I've done with it. And if anyone out there has a copy, please let me have a copy. Oh, it was so great. But we would go to we would be at our apartment, and the night before the cabaret, we would do the little pieces of paper with each sketch written down on it, or the title of each sketch, and we had a big blank wall that we just taped them to, and then rearranged them until we had the order of the show. I remember Stuart falling asleep under the wall, and we took a picture of him like a little kid under the Christmas tree.
Oh,
But it was amazing how committed we were to making this thing happen, and it was just people doing it. There was no negotiating pay and like
there was
art
no
fees,
stress.
there was a lot of stress.
Well, I should say,
but but it was all just try to get us to the point of being awesome.
and that's, I mean, when you go to Barkerville, and you walk through the park and you meet all the interpreters and you meet the people that run the stores. It is like the smallest army of actors, performers, musicians that I think I'd challenge people to like put us up. Like there's certain years there that I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
there's a tremendous amount of talent, and it was pretty special. It was pretty awesome that it all came together. Just that theater, I think the theater opened up at the right time for us all to get to know each other and
Yeah.
yell and get really stressed out with each other and get really like every show that once the show ended, it was like, okay, perfect. What's next week?
That's
I got an idea for next week. And then sometimes you'd be writing sketches that would be just, we're sitting around a campfire. And you're like, this is a sketch. But
Depending on how much alcohol had been consumed, whether it was a sketch that got used or not. But yeah, I mean, right from the start, David and I, he was there in 2004. I was up there by 2005 to do full summer with him. And we lived in the super happy fun clubhouse
I
with
remember that.
Dirk Van Stralen and Julia Mackey and David and I. And once again, it was just a big patio full of people creating and coming together to make this Midsummer Night's Dream happen. And that was an enormous cast. Obviously, with that much talent, there's no double casting.
No.
And, not many people can say that they performed Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream out in a clearing in a historical town with the northern lights above them. That's
correct.
just pretty special. And it was a very good production. I mean, we did everybody motivated themselves to practice, and it wasn't just sitting around and talking about how great it was going to be when we get this done. It was people factioning off into the spirits, and then the not spirits but into the fairies, and then the mechanicals, and then the lovers, and practicing in those little groups, so that by the time we would get back together for the big rehearsals, everybody couldn't believe how good everyone else had already gotten in just their own time. It was lovely.
Well, Christina, I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with me today. I had a lot of fun going down memory lane with you and hearing
Yeah.
some new things. Now, we can find you online. You have your company. You're on Twitter. I'm going to post all your handles. But you're on Twitter. You're on Facebook.
Yep.
And you have your website. I'm going to post all of the way people can reach you, book you and your lovely husband for shows. But I really appreciate you sitting down talking with me today. And I want to say thank you.
I want to thank you. This has been great. And it's been fun revisiting some of those just crazy times.
Us teachers got to stick together.
That's right.
History Town is made possible through the hard work, determination, and man hours of James Douglas, Dirk Van Stralen. Also, special thank you to Debbie and Cyril Quick, and a very special thank you to my wife Genevieve Quick, and my guest this afternoon.
I'm Christina Patterson. I am with Launchpad Theatre Company, and I portrayed Mrs. Hall between the years of 2005 and 2007 in Barkerville, British Columbia.
Well, folks, that's all for this week's episode. It was lovely having Christina Patterson on. And next week, we'll have Brendan Bailey. Now, Brendan Bailey is currently working in Barkerville. He was on the street interpretation program, and now he's going to be doing the judges for the September month. So It's going to be great to hear his perspective. We haven't really had much conversation together, so you'll be listening to us have our first conversation together, really. Now, I'm going to end this week's show with a song from the Wake Up Jacob band. It's Mary Come Home. You can find it on the album Castles in the Sky. Just, it's a great song. It was one of my favorites that would be sung at the Theatre Royal. So, this is Matthew Quick signing off from History Town. Good day, folks.
Oh, Mary, dear Mary, come home with me now. The sleigh from Mosquito has come. You promised to live in my little board house as soon as the papering was done. The fire burns brightly in the sheet iron stove. The bed is made up by the wall. But it's lonesome, you know, these long winter nights with no one to love me at all. Come home, come home, come home. Please, Mary, dear Mary, come home. Hear the sad voice of this poor miner sing, which the night winds repeat as they roll. Oh, who could resist this most plaintive of prayers? Please, Mary, dear Mary, come home. Oh, Mary, dear Mary, come home with me now. Oh, George with his Cuitan is here. You can, if you like, have your drink of Old Tom, but I'd rather you drink lager beer. I've come all this way through the cold drifting snow and brought you a message from Yakko. And these were the very last words that she said, Glushwawa delat me kachako. Come home, come home, come home. Please, Mary, dear Mary, come home. Hear the sad voice of this poor miner sing, which the night winds repeat as they roam. Oh, who could resist this most plaintive of prayers? Dear Mary, come home. Mary, dear Mary, come home with me now. The time by my watch, love, is 3. The night it grows colder, and George with the sleigh down the road now is waiting for me. She stopped at a stump on her way up the hill and whispered for me not to follow. But pressing my hand ere I left her, she said, Dilatika Jacko, tomorrow. Come home, come home, come home. Please, Mary, dear Mary, come home. Hear the sad voice of this poor miner sing, which the night winds repeat as they roam. Oh, who could resist this most plaintive of prayers? Please, Mary, dear Mary, come home. Come home, come home, come home. Please, Mary, dear Mary, come home. Hear the sad voice of this poor miner sing, which the night winds repeat as they roam. Oh, who could resist this most plaintive